We all dream of success, of an opportunity like Tom Burton had, going on Shark Tank. What a phenomenal opportunity. That's the pinnacle, right? That's what he thought. He thought, okay, I'm going to go on Shark Tank. I'm going to have everything I need. And like us, that's why we're willing to hustle and grind to get opportunities like that. But why do we have such a grind culture? Why are we willing to hustle and grind so much? Why are you grinding so hard? Is it for the right reasons? I had to really sit on that and think about it. Are we pursuing success for the right reasons, the right underlying reasons? It's really going to make you think. Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I am very excited for today's guest, Mr. Tom Burton. Tom, how are you doing today?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Tom and I grew up maybe 15 miles from each other. Right now I can't do the math on how far away, maybe you know, but we are 15,000. I don't know how many miles there are, but he is in Serbia right now. So if you don't know Tom, first of all, we've been talking for a half hour here. He actually said hit record, so we might pull some of that discussion into the show itself. But if you don't know Tom, so CEO and founder of Grypmat, if you've heard of that before, if you remember the Shark Tank episode, Tom was on Shark Tank. I'll talk more about that. But his background was he was an F-16 weapons mechanic, and that's how he came up with the idea of the Grypmat, but also just an inventor, an engineer, very, very creative. So all kinds of accolades, Kickstarter, Shark Tank. And I want to ask this, I want to talk about Shark Tank. Like, I'm kind of going to ask you, did you get lucky to get on Shark Tank? Because as I was looking into you more, maybe people think that, but I think there's a different story. Forbes 30 under 30, Times Magazine, Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies, all these different accolades. So Tom, first of all, congratulations on all the success. And I want to hear more about kind of what you've been doing, because this is really, really interesting to me and a lot of self-reflection. But before we get into that, tell us the story of Shark Tank, and really, as I looked into it more, what led up to that and how you got there, because it wasn't just apply, get lucky. There's much more to it. So tell us that story. And even if you want to go back further, a little bit more backstory behind that.
Yeah, so a little pro tip of anyone interested in the show is that oftentimes, so when it comes time to sign up for Shark Tank, they'll have recruiters that will reach out through Kickstarter. So successful Kickstarters, they'll try to get them on the show. Now, you don't typically get a big leg up, but what was a big advantage for me is that I already made a demo video for Kickstarter, and they're like, just submit that. So I was that year, I was basically the first person to submit it. So there was no guarantee, but every single person that reviewed it, it was a guarantee that they would see my video.
Okay.
So that really helped.
And you talked a lot too about, so the hustle behind that. You had sales. I mean, Grypmat was having some success as well, but also, and maybe we'll get into some of the practices you've employed over the course of time, visualization of how that was going to go, the prep for the show itself. Talk a little bit about that. And honestly, I encourage you to go watch it, because, I used to watch a lot of Shark Tank. So then I watched your episode again recently. I'd seen it years ago, and kind of how old were you at the time?
So this year is my 10th year of 10 years since recording. So I was 26. Now I'm 35. So I guess we got 9 years.
But at the age of 26, you controlled that room. I mean, there's 5 sharks there, and I think you knew who you wanted. It seemed like, but you controlled. I mean, Richard Branson, Mark Cuban, right? There's some pretty high-profile sharks that the show is intended. They're sharks. They're coming at you, and you kind of said what you wanted, and it was pretty impressive. So talk about the prep for that, the specific show and recording.
When Shark Tank is reaching out to you, they don't use at sharktank.com, because everyone's going to blow up their email. So they're using all these personal emails that look kind of shady. And then you have them asking you very sensitive information about your business. And you're like, I don't know if this is real. And also they'll call you from different numbers. So I on my phone, I'd literally put, when they call me, I put Shark Tank 1, Shark Tank 2. I think I had 6. So there was a point where I'm like, I don't know if this is real. And then we get to the airport. I'm like, oh, they bought a plane ticket. This is real. But then, when they had a van come pick us up, and it looked like it was done with a black Sharpie marker and a blank white piece of paper that was just written Shark Tank season 9, and it was in like a white van as if you're going to kidnap people.
It was season 9 and it was still like this.
Yeah, well, this is just how they do it. so I'm like, I had somebody with me. I'm like, I don't know if this is legit. So we get in the van. It's legit. They like gather us up and they give us like a little tour of like backstage, and they're like, okay, this is where you're going to start. Then you're going to walk out here, and then you're going to pitch to the Sharks, and then they bring us back to the hotel. I'm literally in the van like, hey, are you here for Shark Tank? Because I'm asking other people who are in the van, because you're sworn to secrecy. Do not tell anyone. So both sides are like, are we allowed to say something? I just want to make sure I'm not getting kidnapped.
You're like waiting for the person driving or whoever to interrogate you if you say the wrong thing.
Yeah. So the other people are like, yeah. I think so. But then we end up going to the backstage. We're seeing everything. Okay, this is legit. And they bring us to the hotel, and we're checking in. And I have like tons of pressure on me. Like you said, I did a great pitch, but that day I was so stressed, and I had so much weight of imposter syndrome. And at the time I didn't really understand the imposter syndrome, and I was actually texting a friend about it, and he goes, "Oh, you have imposter syndrome." He goes, "That's a symptom of successful people." And I started looking into it, and the way I think about it in my head, this analogy is a little weird, is imagine if you were pregnant, but you didn't know morning sickness was a symptom. You knew that you were pregnant, but you didn't realize throwing up every morning is a normal symptom. That'd be kind of scary, right? As if like this might actually hurt the baby. So when my friend explained it that way, okay, it made sense. Not until recently I realized what imposter syndrome really came from. So the past few years I've been diving more into mindfulness, reflecting a lot. And I would get asked all the time about imposter syndrome and how to deal with imposter syndrome. And the way I think about it is if I have a headache, typically every time I have a headache, it's because I'm dehydrated. But normal people, or a lot of people, instead of drinking water, they'll take an Advil.
Right.
So the thing is, the headache is the imposter syndrome, where the headache is really a symptom of dehydration. So so the question came in my mind, imposter syndrome is a symptom of what? And what I realized is imposter syndrome is a symptom of lack of worthiness. I felt like I was not worthy to be on stage.
I was gonna ask that because I wanted to make sure I understood it, because it's a symptom of successful people. That's what your buddy told you. Is that imposter syndrome is a symptom of successful people,
right?
But the cause, which means, if I understand it correctly now, the cause of success is the feeling of lack of worthiness.
Well, really, what my friend told me is true, but also the way I took that information was almost like I popped a Motrin. Okay, my lack of worthiness will settle down for now. So that calmed me down for that moment. But in the long term, that started to come back. The imposter syndrome. More specifically, the imposter syndrome may not have came back directly, but the lack of worthiness started to come up in a lot of different ways.
So so this is going to be a big topic. Before I want to get into this more, and like I think what causes, honestly, this is there's a bigger topic here on, I would say, you said it on the pre-show, this word, but grind culture. So I want to come back to that. But before I go there, I want to go back to your story a little bit. So you're on Shark Tank, you get the deal, you get to work with 3 sharks. Talk about, you had been a student, you said, of Richard Branson, who has a ton of different companies and partnerships and everything else in his leadership style. But talk about some of the major lessons maybe from, okay, after the show, you're in business with these sharks that are so well known. Just some of the major takeaways or lessons from that, as that phase of your journey before you kind of started really self-reflecting more and more.
The lessons that I learned, okay, here's a good one. I wanted to be, okay, so due to this lack of worthiness, getting on Shark Tank was a huge form of I am worthy. So I just conquered the Mount Everest of obtaining worthiness for someone who feels unworthy. So what now? There's nothing. What do I do now? Well, the next thing is a Shark Tank update, because the best of the people who were on Shark Tank will come back for an update. Okay, let's do an update. So what lessons did I basically learn from working with billionaires is that you cannot pay a billionaire to do something. They do not, like, especially in my position. A 7-figure business, this guy's worth like 9 figures. This isn't gonna, I can't do anything. So I would see ways of like, okay, I want a Shark Tank update, but how do I get a billionaire to come re-record with me? So I'd find ways of, okay, what do these billionaires want? And then how do I help them get that? So really, at the time, not too many people know this, but when Hillary Clinton ran for president, she picked a vice. Mark Cuban lost to that vice to be the vice. Mark Cuban was almost her pick. So I told Mark, I said, I know you're interested in politics, and I think it would be helpful. Let me back up. I got a call from the head of the Air Force, who allows Air Force footage to be on TV. And he said, a 4-star general saw your episode, and I've been tasked to give you an award. And my response, at this time, I'm struggling to find a way to get a Shark Tank update because my sales were not good enough. And I said, what I knew is that being on the show Shark Tank, they loved that I was the first military person to be on the show. They aired it the day before. They aired it the day before Veterans Day, and every time they would film with a military person, there's always a problem. So I was the first one. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep nailing this angle of being the military guy. So I'm struggling I'm saying, well, we got sales in all these different markets, and like it wasn't as shiny as what other ones were doing. So, okay, I get this phone call. Hey, we want to give you this award. And my reply was, would you like to do it on a Shark Tank update? His reply, oh my God, yeah, that'd be great. Because the whole idea is to get as much exposure for, the military. So people are like, I want to, it's like basically Top Gun.
Yep.
Top Gun's Navy, I'm Air Force, but Top Gun is actually the #1 recruiting movie for the Air Force, even though it's Navy. But anyway, this is what this guy his job is to do, is find this. So okay, so my job is like, okay, well, how do I get one of these guys, these billionaires to come on the show? So knowing that Mark was interested in politics, I said, Mark, I know you're getting more and more interested in politics. It may be beneficial if you had more footage of you with military members. Knowing that he would be on the Democratic side,
right?
That's how he could get more of like
Moderator.
the right wing, votes. So it was kind of wild because I think I was like 27, 28, and we were like in this back room with these like like star generals and Mark and like Secretary of Defense, and we're like talking about how AI is going to shape the world. It was like, this is like in the back room of like we're about to go film. So anyway, that's how I ended up pulling that together. And so when you ask the question, what did you learn? It's like you can't just get a billionaire to call you back. So the thing is, if my company exploded into $1 billion company, the thing is they only have 10%. This would never happen with my type of company. So the thing is, even if it was up that much, both of those, Mark and Branson, are both to the point where 10% of $1 billion, if they were really pissed at you, they don't care. Right. They don't need to care. So learning that was, and to a point that mindset kind of works with working with anyone.
Yeah. Well, so that's interesting. By the way, I don't know if you know that some of the stories or what's the right, don't mess with the Clinton. You brought up the Clintons. Don't mess with the Clintons, Tom. So I don't know how else to say that.
I'm in Serbia. I'm in Serbia, where this is like,
you're in Serbia. You're in hiding. There you go.
No,
I don't know.
They don't like the Clintons here.
And I was also like, well, now I'm in on it too, so I better watch my back. And I'm not in Serbia. I'm in the United States. So I don't think I'm on the radar. You may be, but I think the lesson there is really understand who you're working with and really what their needs are. And money just couldn't even be a factor at that point in time. And just go ahead.
To be fair, it's a form of negotiation, a form of bartering. Thing is, there's times as an entrepreneur where you don't have any money, and if you actually know what people want, that opens the door. Because the thing is, if I'm going to pay someone, they're going to take the money and buy what they actually want. They're not just going to keep it into money. They're going to go buy something. So there was times where I didn't have enough money to make a mold or do some, one time I bought a guy a case of beer so he would make a mold for me. And that case of beer was like $20-$30. Later, I ended up paying for the mold when I had money. It was like $2,000. I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize how well I was getting off. So yeah, so the thing is, I was doing that just on a bigger level. The thing is, in the smaller scale, yeah, I could fork up the money to do it. But in this higher level, it's a different ball game.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, you kicked off this discussion on the symptoms of successful people, imposter syndrome, and I think what has led to, we talked about this a little bit, but this grind culture that we're in, and just understanding that more, one of the things is why do we have, I guess, what is your theory on why grind culture exists?
I think it exists due to purely lack of worthiness. Now, the thing is, grind culture has taught us some good things, as we need to show up every day, be consistent. But the idea of I'm going to be consistent and sacrifice something, that's different. The thing is, grind culture is focused on winning, but if you lost yourself in the process, what is it worth?
So let's talk about your story, right? So you were winning from a worldly perspective. You had success and you gave up things for that. And okay, you could look at it and say, I gave things up for that, but you could also look at it and say, but through that process, through those challenges, through suffering and whatever, everything that happened, you grew from that process too. How do I reconcile those two things? Is that, yes, I gave things up, but yes, I grew from this a lot.
Yeah. So there's a point of there's a point of there's some things that you need to give up. You need to sacrifice. Example is doom scrolling. Scrolling on your Facebook all day, like that also gets to go. So the thing is, there the lack of worthiness can show up in unmotivated, and lack of worthiness can also show up as motivated. So the key thing is making sure that we're on a healthy side of motivation. So the difference of, I sit on the couch and eat Cheetos all day because I don't feel worthy, that's lack of worthiness. I go run a marathon by shaming myself, that's also out of lack of worthiness. So the thing is, to me, they look very different, but that's the same. That's like the dandelion. There's a yellow version of dandelion, and later there's a white version that you can like blow out as kids. It's the same weed, but it looks different. So the guy on the couch eating Cheetos is coming from lack of worthiness. Also, I'm shaming myself. So if you know David Goggins,
Yep,
he is the shame master. And
right.
it's to the point where we shame ourselves so much, now our identity is in it. He's written books about it.
Yep.
He's applauded in the street for shaming himself. So the thing is, it's just really locked us down harder. It's like another ball and chain. So now he's got like the shame motivation and the identity. It's almost like two ball and chains.
Yeah, especially when the identity phase of that, I guess. But what's help help with, entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners, they're like in, the symptoms of like success, let's just say successful people, right? People listening to this they're hungry, they're motivated, they're trying to do something, right? They're trying to be better at work, in their profession, at home, wherever it might be, right? So
Right.
what's how do we look at this from a healthy lens?
So what is the motivation to be better?
Yeah.
The motivation is to be better because I'm a worthless piece of shit, or the motivation is to be better because I'm just simply curious of how this works. If you look of like let's take two people who are curious about healthcare. One that's doing it out of I'm not worthy enough. I need to make more money. One that's doing it out of scarcity. The thing is, that's going to be the health insurance that ends up cutting corners. What was it, United Health, that the CEO was killed?
Yep.
They implemented an AI program that it was 90% inaccurate, but because they saved money, they kept it going anyway because they knew that their customers didn't know how to defer it. They didn't know how to battle them in court. They knew they didn't have enough money to battle them in court. Those people were acting out of scarcity. Those people, they weren't acting out of like, how do we help the world? How do we do this in abundance?
But is that so just to make sure I understand, like how do I know? So first of all, the guy that wrote Gino Wickman and then Rob Dube wrote. So Gino Wickman wrote the book Traction EOS, and then they also wrote a book called Shine, and they talk about acting out of love versus fear, and scarcity versus abundance. But how do I know? Like, I think this is the journey you went on. I guess I think this is what you've been self-reflecting on this a lot. Is like, why am I acting? Why am I trying to get? Am I trying to get to this next level to prove I can to somebody else, or am I doing this because I'm trying to serve and help people? And I think there's been a shift in your, I'll say, career, life, whatever it is, where you've shifted from one to the other. But how do I know, as an entrepreneur, business leader, aspiring, whatever, that I'm doing this for the right reasons? How did you get there?
I almost look at it as, what do you call it, Jenga? Building a castle out of Jenga.
Right.
The thing is, I got so high that it ended up, the higher you get, the harder the fall is going to be. So, I had the mindset that I mean, through COVID, when the world shut down, no one's driving cars, which means no one's using tools, which means no one's buying Grypmats. Thing is, we increased our sales by 50%. That was the biggest year we had. So I had this mindset that I could run through walls, which was really just like feeding my ego. But really, I wasn't doing it out of like you use the word love. I was doing it out of scarcity. I was doing it, to be seen by others. Think any time that someone needs external validation, the scarcity of that is internal validation. If you're seeking external validation, that is proof that you don't have internal validation. Someone who's internally validated, a side effect of internal validation is not needing to prove themselves.
As business owners, if we're looking for, you told a story beforehand, but we're looking for like the right fuel, right? The right fuel to get to, like to motivate us. But it's not, we don't want that to be ultimately internal validation via external validation, I think, if I understand that right. So what is the fuel? Like, let's talk about the fuels of why we do things.
Yeah. So, I mean, like if I were to stop right now, how would I feel? If I were to stop right now, am I feeling like I'm going to be left behind? Do I have anxiety? Do I have fear? Like, if you were to take a day off, some people are like panicked to take a day off. Now, in some specific situations is that, maybe you're about to close with a client, like you can't take a day off. But once you close, then you can take a day off and we're cool. But the way I felt with Grypmat was like, if I were to stop, then I was actually losing my self-worth. I felt less worthy. So then therefore that just highlights, okay, this is actually the score. This is your scoreboard. Like I need to keep doing stuff to keep the score up.
Do you think, so scoreboard.
Yeah.
And you said, building the Jenga blocks and like you got to a point, like, I mean, all these accolades, right? And the harder the fall, but do you think you needed to keep going to figure this out? As in, what if you figured this out if you would have only went 2 rows up and the Jenga tower would have fell over?
Right. You can tell some kids that the stove is hot, and you can tell some kids, like some kids just have to burn their hand on the stove. I was a kid who needed to burn their face on the stove before I figured it out.
Like the total face burn.
Yeah, it's like, you smell it? What's that burning? Oh, it's my face. Oh my God. Yeah.
But I think for the listeners, I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, and you said it, is like, if you were to stop what you're doing, how would that make you feel? And just why are you doing what you're doing? By the way, if there's things I don't want to confuse people with this, because if there's things you're not doing that you really want to do, but you don't need the validation of it, you just really are called to do it, think you can provide a lot of value, help people, serve people, you're curious how you might do that. I think that's the healthy motivation to go back, right? Am I getting that right?
The most important part is awareness. This will dictate everything. So to me, awareness is almost like electricity in a house. If you have one outlet, it's hard to run a normal house. You can run the microwave, but then you got to unplug the fridge, and then you can't watch TV. But the thing is, if you have more electric, then therefore the awareness is helping. It's almost like the smog is getting more clear. So the thing is, I don't think it's fully safe to say, I'm going to help other people, because a lot of times when people go on that venture to help other people, they're trying to help people who never even asked. So they're really wanting to help the person how they feel good to help, where no one really even asked for help. So and then there's a breakdown in communication. Like, man, these people are unappreciative of what I did. Yeah, because they never asked them for help. So I think to me a safe way to think of it is there the mindset of, if I do something, then I can feel X. If I do X, sorry, I'm going to back up. If I do X, then I will feel Y. If I write a book, then I'll feel worthy. If I sell millions of copies with the book, then I can relax. Because also, if you're doing this from scarcity, there's a trap in this where if you're doing this with scarcity, if I get on Shark Tank, then therefore I can feel successful. But when you're really doing it out of scarcity, you'll look back on what you made and you'll minimize the value of the success, and then you need to do something else. Okay, now I got a Shark Tank update. Look at, I could do something. Forbes 30 under 30. Yeah, but it's like, because the other ones is why I really got it. So then there's this constant like ladder that's being climbed that's never ending. So the thing is that if you can think of it as like, so if I go on Shark Tank, therefore I will be successful. Well, what would someone do if they were successful? That's two different things. I'm trying to prove I'm worthy. I'm trying to get success versus I am successful.
And
Those
I think
are two different people.
If you're trying to, like, if you're trying to be successful when you get there, you're either going to learn from that and realize that wasn't what you needed, or you're going to keep trying to be successful until you burn your hand, until the tower falls over, right? I mean, I think that's the way to think about it. And I think that the book analogy, and even like curiosity, like you talked about this too, but the book analogy resonates, or even I've used this, I've talked about this before, like this podcast. If I'm trying to do this and I need views and clicks and everything else, versus if I'm doing this because this provides me the opportunity to talk to, learn from, sit down with Tom, that's the healthy approach to, okay, I'm just going to do this because I'm curious how different people think about not success, but excellence, becoming the best version of themselves, their self-reflection, their journey, what they've learned from it that I can take from that, right? That's like, I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. I'm just saying I'm trying to because I love having these conversations, and I'm trying to lean into that more than, okay, how do I make this impact? And I want to come back to the impact, like, for people and what we're trying to project on them too. But yeah, go ahead.
So like what I do with my podcast is like, I think I'm like less than 20 episodes, 15 episodes in. The way I think about it is, so I have a checklist of everything I need before, lighting, mic, whatever. I also have a mental checklist. The mental checklist is, this is going to be the best podcast ever. This is a gift for me. If this is such a gift, if this doesn't even air, if there's something wrong where the file gets effed up and never airs, it was still worth it. So with that mindset is like, I have to be present for that conversation. If I'm constantly thinking like, oh, that was a good bite, yeah, that'd be a great hook that'd make a great thumbnail, that'd make a great Instagram reel or short or whatever, that I'm not present. And I'm actually like deferring this gift of this person's time.
Yep. Yeah. I like, by the way, I love.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
the mental check, like, so I have the checklist, but the mental checklist, like, I love that concept. And I think for you listening, okay, you're not, maybe you're on podcast, maybe you're not, but whatever you're like, any meeting you're having, right? Anytime you're trying to get an outcome from a meeting, anytime you're trying to mentor someone, be mentored by someone, talking to a kid, talking to a spouse, it doesn't matter, right? Like, how are you showing up to that conversation and having, like, because I think being present, we didn't talk about this like in advance, but being present is such a hard thing. I think, like, it is for me. The book, The Power of Now, by the way, I don't know if you read it, like a great book, but the challenge.
I think that's like the Power Now to me is like the modern Bible. Like that is such a good book.
It is.
That is a life-changing book.
It is. I've referenced it before, actually, so I'm going on a tangent, but when my boss told me about it, probably a decade ago, he said, hey, I don't tell a lot of people about this book because it's like, I don't want to say it's not out, it's just deep. Like, you got to be ready for it. And when I read that book the first time, I was on a trip to Europe on the plane. I was extremely tired when we got there because I didn't sleep. and I remember being, the whole Monday being lack of sleep and being incredibly present and engaged and great attitude, like just feeling joy and like just feeling so good because I was this book was so fresh in my mind. But I think, to go back, the reason I wonder if you think it's so powerful is because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are trying to even grow and develop, presence is the challenge. Tell me more about kind of how you think about.
Well, so the idea of, it sounds like a little bit with your questions of like, how does someone decide, like really figure out if, they're going the right way with entrepreneurship or not? The only way that is possible is through presence. That is not through a vision board. That is not through, having goals for next year. That is simply being here right now and going into like being on this podcast. Am I really like trying to get a lot of views? Am I worried about like views is not now, views is in the future. Do I want a good sound bite? The thing is that's actually, what's funny is that's actually preventing me from having a good sound bite, is worrying about a good sound bite. So the thing is, my podcast right now, I kind of debate with a name, but I call it Intuition of a CEO. And I believe that your intuition is what is basically like your compass through your life, through your business or anything. So that is when the numbers don't add up, you end up making a different decision. And there's lots of times where I was like, the numbers add up, I'm committed to these numbers. The numbers we're going to keep going up. The numbers are always in the future, not in the present. Where internally, my intuition's like, stop, do not do this, get out. But I'm like, no, the numbers say it, let's go. So the thing is, to back up with the idea of intuition, it's like, well, how do you hear your intuition? Typically what's happening is the scarcity is too loud. If you and I went to a restaurant and the music was loud, I wouldn't bring a megaphone and yell through the megaphone to talk to you. We'd simply just ask them to turn down the music. Right. So the real question isn't how do I hear my intuition better? The real question is how do we see these scarcities that are screaming inside of us? Right. And the only way to do that is through presence. Yeah. So when it comes, yeah, go ahead.
The book is powerful. I mean, you cannot be at peace. You cannot have joy if you're living in the past or projecting the future. And you can't even live there. Like you're creating something that doesn't even exist. So how can you be happy versus just right now in the moment? And I'm paraphrasing some of it, but it's when you read it, I've referenced it a couple times over the last year or two. It's a really powerful book, really powerful concepts. And I think a lot of people that are probably listening to this struggle with this as I do. And you gotta be mentally aware of it and then help leverage presence to help follow intuition versus all the math and everything else that you talked about, right?
Yeah. So with what you're saying, like past, present, future, if you can think of, there's almost like three separate buckets. So really only certain emotions are available in those three. So anxiety, where does anxiety come from?
Yeah, future.
Only future. So if I have issues with anxiety, that means I'm struggling to be present. I'm not being present. So if I struggle with guilt, where am I?
Yeah, I mean past. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, guilt's for the past. So the thing is to actually be peace, to have peace, that can only be in present.
One place.
Yeah.
You know what? That's interesting because he talks about you can only peace and joy can only be in the present. But I haven't thought about for yourself, so if you feel a lot of guilt, a lot of regret, a lot of resentment, right? Yeah. Where those are not right now in this moment. You're thinking about something from your past, right? And everybody listening, because You're nodding your head, like nod your head right now if you're, so everyone else that's listening is doing the same thing. We all have it,
Yeah.
right? Future, okay, like planning, anxiety, fear. I mean, fear has to be the future, right? It's not what happened in the
Only
past. It's fear
future.
of the future. And there's a, I've had a great worry. I've had a lot of great worries in my life, which most of which have never happened. Mark Twain, I believe. So, but I've never heard anyone say, like, write down the emotions you feel a lot. I think this would be a good exercise. Like, I think I should think about this, but put them in one of three buckets, because I think they can only be in one of three. I love that.
Yeah, I actually think that, okay, so typically there's like a thing that I don't like, or like people don't like. Like you said, what's the emotion you typically feel a lot? Let's say I guess, do you have one? Do we use it as an example?
I would say, like, I don't know if it's like, I'm not an anxious person, but I'm trying to plan. Like, I'm living in the
Okay,
future
you want
too
to
much. Whether
plan.
there's
You want to plan.
like I'm an engineer. I'm
Okay,
thinking, I'm planning. I'm like, what can happen?
yeah.
Like all the scenarios, all this.
What does
Yes.
planning mean to you?
Knowing, certainty.
Knowing, certainty. What does lack of knowing mean to you? I don't know. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think this is where what I've been leaning. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm gonna get philosophical on you. But what I've been leaning into is like curiosity and adventure and embracing not knowing, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna do what I can control, and then I think this is the right direction. But I'm just gonna do it, and I'm gonna see it. I'm very curious, because I also believe that things happen for a reason, and if it doesn't go to plan like I planned, it's because it's not my plan. But if it doesn't go to plan, let's see where it goes. Like, you can't connect the dots forward, right? So but the reason I talk about this and people hear me say those things is because it's what like the struggles I've gone through, the things I've thought about a lot, right? So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but as I told you, Tom, I'm the interviewer. I get asked the questions here. So.
Fair. Okay, I'll ask you.
No, you were going to ask me, I think, another question, so you can dissect me a little bit more.
Well, I guess like the point that I'm trying to make is typically those things are rooted to trying to point to something, but we're not willing to dive in deep enough. So it's just a constant like reoccurring thing. So the way I think about it is, if you're engineering, is sometimes, like, let's say with algebra, anyone who hates algebra, like, chill out. It'll be easy. Is sometimes, like, when you have to solve for x, right? So sometimes you have multiple variables. So like if you have x and y. So sometimes solving for y will actually get you closer to figuring out what x is, right? So if you say like, well, I'm a planner, what does that mean? It doesn't really get us anywhere. Or you're like, it means certainty. Okay, well, what does certainty mean? I don't know. But if you say, well, what does like the absence of certainty mean? Okay, so we kind of like flipped the equation a bit. So now we can be like, oh, actually that means like I'm not worthy. I'm in panic. I could have done better. I don't know. So the idea of like flipping it helps me like go down the road of like, figure out what I want. So also, you mentioned, like, how do you know, like, where's the line for an entrepreneur of, what direction should they do? Like, should they just simply help people or whatever? The only way to truly know if it is the right direction is by being present, and also like listening to your intuition. I'm not going to sit here and say, as long as you're helping people, you're good, because helping people is also a great distraction to looking internally.
So, two things. One, I like how you said not willing to go deep enough earlier. I just want to close that, because as you started to go deeper with questions, I made it into a joke. I said, hold on, stop. We're not going.
They avoided it.
I was like,
I noticed that. I was like, I'm not gonna peg him for that. But okay.
So now I lost my train of thought. But have you not followed your intuition at times where you think about that a lot? Because you brought up intuition a couple times now.
Yeah. Actually, The easiest one was I made a Facebook post, lost me $250,000. I made a private group of Snap-on tool truck franchise owners. They put in the group something about some price issue with the Grypmats. I deleted it because I panicked. That got back to corporate. We did not launch corporately. That would have been a $250,000 deal, easily.
So help me understand the intuition within that.
My intuition, it was a soft whisper, don't fuck with it. I was like, but I'm in panic mode. I was literally getting into an Uber and I'm like, I don't have time for this, just delete it. And then that was a $250,000 deal, gone.
Yeah.
And I know we would have gotten that deal because I had what I call internal champions. I had every single internal champion. Like it was, Snap-on's not easy to work with, but it would have worked.
This has been fantastic. And honestly, Tom, so here's what I'll say is between the half-hour conversation we had before we actually hit record right away. So if it's choppy, it's because there's bits of that were so good. But in all seriousness, over the course of the last hour and a half, getting to know you from, again, across the world, but you're just 20 miles away or so. This has really been great. And I look forward to continuing the dialogue and learning from each other and helping each other out how we can. And I definitely want to help point people to your podcast and wherever else you want to direct them. But just kind of two closing questions. First of all, I want to dig into a little bit, like tell me more about helping others. Cause I talk about, from a purpose perspective and thinking through like purpose for different areas of life and what your purpose for different areas of life are, that for each area of life, it needs to be from a place of like, how are you, like, what is your purpose to help others? Like it needs to be bigger than yourself. And so to give an example, this was kind of an aha, like health. If your health purpose is, I want to be healthy because I want to look good, that's about yourself, right? There's external validation there. If it's, so like mine, I want to have energy for my kids and my grandkids and to live my purpose. Like that's what my health, so it's now around others, right? So I'm asking if you want to challenge that thought process. Like, so from a professional perspective, is it to serve others or is it, I think it's still, I think you'd say it's still good to help others, but don't let that be a distraction from building your own self-knowledge, self-awareness.
I would say simply the purpose is to be present. That the presence will tell you what your purpose is. And also keep in mind that in the present that may change. So like you're saying, my purpose is to be healthy because I have kids. Like that, you have kids right now, but that may change. They may move out. They may, anything. So, what if someone's purpose was to be a good dad? Something tragic could happen to their kids. Now your purpose is like almost killer inside, and it might maybe something under your control. So really the purpose is, to simply just be in the present. So the idea of helping others, that's typically a place people start, but also that's a great place to distract yourself. Where really, if you're helping other people when in the form of ignoring yourself, you're not helping them. You're just in the illusion that you're helping them. So by simply just being present, is this here right now? Is this true? There was a long time Grypmat wasn't what was true, but I was like, but this was my source of self-worth. This is my source of validation. I had to keep it because there, it's almost like I have this like analogy I haven't quite worked through, but it's almost like I envision a room that you like kind of look in right away and everything's white. You can't see anything. You're like, nothing's in there. There's nothing in this room. There's nothing that's worth anything. But then if you actually like look in the room that's all white, you're like, oh, there's actually a couch in here. It's covered by a white sheet. And like the more you look, you're like, there's actually a painting up here. It's all covered up too. And then you realize there's a lot in here. So that's where for me my journey is, you know, it's not, you know, someone who doesn't have self-worth, the trap is like, okay, well, if I'm basically low on the scoreboard, I can do stuff for more. There's no doing for more worthiness. There's only seeing it. And underneath that is accepting it.
Yep.
As long, for a while, I couldn't accept it. Actually, just recently, I think this is actually the first podcast I was able to accept when someone said my accomplishments. You list my accomplishments at the beginning, and I was like, I've never had someone list those, and I was able to accept it because I didn't feel worthy to accept those accomplishments. So the thing is, I thought that the byproduct of the accomplishments would be worthiness. The byproduct of worthiness is accomplishments.
First of all, I appreciate that. And I think, you know, what that last 30 seconds made, like, helps me understand is, I've heard this before, but, and this is the power, I think, of being fully present is you don't know why you're going through different successes or challenges when they're happening. And Tom's challenge to you is to be very, very present and aware while you're going through those things. But I think like the aha here is you have a strong message now, but you had to go through the challenges and the struggles. And even what's so interesting is like the help you can provide people that are struggling with, honestly, self-worth and worthiness is more powerful because they can feel probably the struggle. I mean, the pinnacles of success, right? Like from small town to all these accolades, but inside there's a lot of struggle as part of that. And there's people that are struggling. I mean, the reality there just is. And you didn't have the intention to have that discussion right there that we just had, but you're fully present, which will result in helping people out. That's how kind of I reconcile all of that, is that you didn't have the intention to,
Yeah.
you didn't have a goal, an outcome you were trying to project at all there. You could feel it. And if you did, we wouldn't have felt it. So I appreciate the presence and engagement and kind of going with your intuition there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. There's, you know, every single person, what's interesting is we're viewing it as like we're valuing success. But the thing is, everyone knows someone who was successful that ended up killing themselves. So it's like there's clearly like a disconnect there.
For sure.
So someone with success and worthiness, that's healthy. So success does not equal bad. The lack of worthiness is where it can get dangerous.
Right. And I think there's just there's soul searching we all have to do on if we're trying to be successful, or if we're like, we just have to ask why are we trying to do things and you know, honestly, self-growth, self-awareness, like you said, awareness, I forget how you said it, but like awareness is so critical. And if you want to help people, the best way to help people, I think, is to really grow in your own self-awareness, like help yourself, understand yourself, grow yourself. I think that's the most powerful thing. And then being present becomes extremely powerful when you have very strong self-awareness.
Yeah, anyone who's wondering in what direction to go, being present and knowing yourself more, that's where the next direction that'll guide you to the next direction. Not, well, let me ask my mom. Let me ask a mentor.
You got to act. You can't sit still too. Like there's this whole discussion. I mean, that's 100%. You got to get clear on what you want to do, but you got to educate yourself, connect, grow, act, and then reflect in kind of this cycle, right?
I guess simply, when you're saying like you still have to act, I look at like doing versus being. So doing is the action, being. The thing is, typically, am I doing something to obtain a being versus like before I do something, what is my being? So I want to do something to feel successful. That means my current being is lack of success, not worthy. So the thing is, it's okay to do. There's nothing wrong with doing, there's nothing wrong with acting, but making sure that you're seeing your being, which is by being present before you do, before you act.
And there's like the way so be, do, have. And if you're targeting a have, what can I have? Success. What is the result? If I'm targeting that, if that's the goal is what I have, then it's going to be empty there, right? Who are you? Who are you at your core is the question. Who do I want to be? And then act as that person, be that person, right? So who do you want to be? Act, do. And honestly, you have to disconnect from the have, the success, the results. But be who you want to be at its core is how I've heard it said before.
Yeah, letting the, I think of kind of like byproduct or whatever. If you make nice furniture, a byproduct of that will be sawdust. But if you make the sawdust the focus, you'll never get nice furniture. If you just so the thing is, the nice furniture is your being, and your basically being present. If I write a book, I will be worthy. I will be successful. The sawdust is the success. That's not true. If I'm successful, like what do successful people do? They may write a book. Okay, well that book will be successful. If you're trying to force a book into success, it doesn't work that way.
Tom, this has been great. This is this time has been great. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. How can people find out more about you, what you're doing?
Yeah, so everything's going on my YouTube channel called Intuition of a CEO.
Perfect.
So we will find me there on YouTube.
We will put that in the show notes. Check it out for sure. Tom, this has been great. Again, just how we got connected, really neat. Really appreciate your time. Opening up and being transparent and just being present. Honestly, there is extreme power in being present, and you brought that, and I'm so grateful for that. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.